So welcome back to the second case for this week of for Friday. In this case, we are going to New Mexico. Yeah, of course, I know it's like the third New Mexico case I've covered, like this year alone. I don't know what they got going on in New Mexico. Will I find more New Mexico cases? Pretty sure I will. But yeah, first we have Victoria Martins, then we have the disappearance of Girly Chew, and now we got this case about a child and the case involving a sandbox, hence the title of this video. Of course, it's very sad. Sources down below as always. I think I did the best I could. Even though there's like 6 sources, which to most people is pretty good, but like I try to get everything I can. And so with that being said, let's get started in the video.
But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, maybe you'll get sick of being the monster out of my head, under my bed. Think you're something out of my nightmares, standing right there. But if I lay down and I play dead and I stay dead, then will you get bored of killing me?
So we don't have a date of birth for our killer, but we do have a name, obviously. And so her name's Tiffany. We're the first Tiffany. Tiffany has a sister named Emily. Apparently she grew up in like an abusive household and was calling basically what I know is CPS. But apparently up in New Mexico, it is the Children, Youth, and Families Department up there several times in her childhood. Because apparently she's living in an abusive house. She's being abused in her childhood. They apparently, they have no jurisdiction apparently because Tiffany and her family are Native American, and therefore apparently they have no jurisdiction over tribal land. So basically, you in tribal land, we can't help you. So of course, Tiffany winds up getting pregnant. Who the father is, I did not see, but she basically winds up having a son. And Tryus Adrian Toribio was born on November 24th, 2005. And of course, her sister Emily's like concerned about Tiffany because apparently she's like down spiraling at this point, and she's asking like CYFD, you know, Children, Youth, and Family Department, asking like, hey, what can we do? Concerned about my sister and my nephew. And apparently she got the same answer. We can't do shit because you're on tribal land, even though they're in Albuquerque, and apparently Albuquerque does not have tribal land. So on May 7th, 2009, Tiffany and Tyrus were kicked out of Tiffany's mom's house. Doesn't give a name, just Tiffany's mom. After they'd been living there for a few months. Tiffany's mom apparently wanted to keep the two, but apparently she was dating some guy named Alex, and Alex wasn't okay with it, so they got kicked out. So then on May 10th, Emily calls 911 after she just got into a fight with Tiffany. She calls CYFD again to get like help for her sister and the nephew. Instead, Tiffany is charged with domestic violence, and those charges would later be dropped. So sometime in May, I don't have an exact date, but sometime in May, apparently she would go turn herself in for a warrant that she had. And normally you have a warrant, they're also going to arrest you. And she even mentions that she's like homeless and stuff. And so the warrant was not found at the time, but it was come out later the warrant did in fact exist. And so I guess she was hoping she would get arrested so like it would take her and her son off the streets. Because they were homeless, and she even mentioned they were homeless at the time. So then apparently on May 13th, 2009, around like 1 a.m. So apparently on that day, around that time, they're getting kicked out of the house. Apparently because she was living with a friend at the time. For what reason she got kicked out, it didn't say, but apparently she just got kicked out. So they go to the park that's nearby. They are apparently walking around in the park until the sprinklers go off. Like the sprinklers stop. Because sprinklers were like going off at like randomly in the middle of the night. But like, okay. So they wait until the sprinklers stop. And Tiffany is like upset because like I'm homeless. I'm like a failure of a mother. She wanted a better life. She said, I don't want the life. I don't want my son having the life that I had, essentially. So then she starts smothering Tyrus. And at some point during the smothering, she changes her mind. She resuscitates him. He, of course, like, comes back. He was still alive at that point. And she changes her mind. She's like, fuck that. She goes and smothers him again, this time killing him. So then she buries her son's dead body in the sandbox, hence why the title of this video is called Sandbox Smothering. And then she said was left about an hour after she did this, and then she went to go sleep in a storage shed behind some apartment. So 2 days later, a mother, doesn't give a name, she is playing with her child, because you know, why else would you be at the playground unless you got a child with you. She finds a shoe sticking out of the sand. She thinks it's just a child that let their shoes. So of course, she picks it up, trying to find put it to where like they can come back and see, oh, I left my shoes here. So she goes and gets the shoe, right? And she sees a leg. She also freaks out. She's like, oh my God, it's attached to somebody's child. 911's called. Obviously, he's still dead. and he had been dead for less than 48 hours when it was discovered. So obviously, that had been very traumatizing for the woman. So of course, they're checking missing children, as you do when you find a dead child. Ain't nobody reported that kid's missing that was around the age that Tyrus was. Again, he was 3 when he was murdered. So they're like, this happened, somebody taking care of him. They check schools, daycares, homeless shelters, anything for a lead. They check other playgrounds nearby to see if anybody knew anything about Tyrus. We didn't even know a name, and his body was too badly decomposed, so they had to compose a sketch of him to release to the media. So if anybody knew information about this child, and this was with the help of the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. And so apparently they even checked surveillance from the courthouse, hospitals, and stores, and they received more than 100 tests. So of course, we ain't got a name for this child, so we're gonna call him Baby Justice and Baby Angel. That's what the names that he were given. That's the names he was given around the time they're trying to figure out whose child this is, right? So then $4,000 gets raised for funeral expenses, and a funeral home even offered to pretty much have the funeral with no extra cost. And apparently at some point, Emily, Tiffany's sister and Tyrus's aunt, she apparently calls in. She's like, I think that's my nephew. So I guess they confirmed that's her nephew. And Tiffany's picture was on TV, and she is found at the bus stop, actually on her way to go turn herself in for Tyrus's murder when she gets arrested. So after she gets in jail, we don't know how long she's been in jail, but apparently sometime after she went to jail, she was put on suicide watch. So she obviously would go to solitary confinement. And so as part of a plea, like they do in a lot of these murder cases, Tiffany would also say she was mentally insane at the time of the murders, basically saying she didn't know what the hell she was doing. And a psychological test that was done revealed that Tiffany actually suffered from major depressive disorders. So that kind of helped her case, sadly. And so in the end, they got tampering with evidence, failure to report death, and concealing identity. And so her final sentence was 33 years, but she got credit apparently for 10 years that she had already served. So really she only has I don't know what year that article was written, the part that says she got credit for 10 years she had already served, because I guess it was 10 years where she even got sentenced. And so, yeah, she may potentially get out in 20 years.